uh, a nonprofit marine conservation organization that's based in Key Largo, Florida. Our three main programs are the Volunteer Fish Survey Project, which is at 30 years this year. So that means we are celebrating 30 years of snorkelers and divers going out and collecting data and contributing to the world's largest database on fish biodiversity and abundance throughout the whole world. So we're really excited about that. Another program that we have is the Grouper Moon Education Program, or the program. And this is a really fantastic collaboration between scientists with REEF, scientists of Oregon State University, and Scripps Institute of Oceanography, as well as the Cayman Department of, wonderful, Martha's saving the day, the Cayman Islands Department of Environment. And all these scientists work together to preserve the endangered species of a Nassau grouper. And just at the spawning aggregation, they spawn once after the full moon in the spring. The numbers have been from 1,500 to about 8,000. So that's really good scientific gains, really exciting. Another one of our programs is the invasive species program, which works on removing invasive species, most notably the lionfish, but also we had a field, our group of staff members go out into the field this week to get another fish that is kind of taking up residence in the West Palm Beach area. And then lastly, our Ocean Explorers Education Program educates people from childhood to ages all the way through adults. If there's any educators on, we welcome all of you tonight. We have virtual programs, we have colleges coming down, we can tailor things to whatever you need. So a very customized education program for any age. So we are hovering at about 75,000 members worldwide, and 250,000 surveys. And that's growing. I think we're already past that. So that's kind of a little bit of an overview for REEF. So if you don't know who we are, our membership is always free. You can go onto our website and learn a little bit more about us at reef.org. And next, before we get into our panel, I'm just going to talk about our agenda. So our Oceans for All program, and then we're going to meet the panelists, and then we have a few announcements. So our Oceans for All program is an initiative that we have for several years now, and we're working to create opportunities for the next generation of scientists and marine conservationists. And we want to support foundational change in science and marine conservation. So we have scholarships, we have programming, and we also have outreach activities that are, this fund helps allow more people to get involved with science and marine conservation, especially those of equity deserving groups and those who may have financial barriers. So since we're committed to furthering diversity, equity, and inclusion in all aspects of our organization, tonight we wanted to highlight and celebrate neurodiversity by learning about its strengths and opportunities. So many of you on here joining us tonight, maybe family members, friends, educators who already are familiar with the term neurodiversity, but just in case you're not, I just kind of a general definition as a starting point. It's an umbrella term that's used to describe alternative thinking styles. So this can be dyslexia, dyspraxia, which is movement and coordination, dyscalculia, and that is a learning disability that just processes number information and math differently, autism, and ADHD. So there can be a lot of financial barriers and access barriers to getting diagnosed. So we just feel that it's important to recognize different ways of thinking and of course celebrate it. So with that being said, I think it's time to start talking and learning and celebrating our incredible and amazing panelists. So I'm going to introduce the panelists, and then after I introduce them here, Brooke is going to speak a few words about this program, and then we're going to dive more into the conversation. So Brooke is here. She is the creator of this program, and so that's why she's going to speak soon. She's a former REEF conservation intern from just, well, I guess a couple months ago now. We were thrilled to have her on board. Toni Galloway is here. She is a PhD candidate from the University of St. Andrews. She's joining us from Scotland very kindly. Jamie Ellis is here. Joining us she is a geologist from the NASA Jet Propulsion Lab. She's a solar system ambassador. And David is joining us from Hawaii. They are a master's student at the University of Hawaii at Hilo. So it's going to be really exciting to hear more about the amazing science that they're doing. I'm so excited, and I hope you are too. So we are going to stop sharing the screen now. And we're going to turn it over to Brooke. And so, Brooke, if you don't mind speaking just shortly about how you came up with the idea for this program.
Yeah, well, I wanted to thank everyone, first of all, for coming up. I'm really excited to actually have my idea come to life and be able to take this initiative and opportunity to actually pull through with an event. A little nervous because I actually never get the opportunity to actually talk about these things and talk about neurodiversity and how it kind of shows up in your life and how it shows up in your career or how it shows up in your day-to-day. And I think that's kind of why I wanted to create this event in the first place, to share those experiences and have other people to share those experiences and kind of create those safe space for everyone, and also be able to have that community with each other. I think that's very important. And mostly I just wanted to be able to have that space where we're all able to just celebrate ourselves as well. So, and I also wanted to be able to have a bunch of other people to be able to join on, whether it's friends or families or educators, where they can learn a little bit more about neurodiversity, hear a bunch of different perspectives and other neurodiversity experiences, because it is very individualistic. So I think it's very important to hear many stories as much as you can, just so we can build that community and as a society strive for more accommodations and better accommodations and create more safe spaces and just have a better understanding of each other.
Excellent. That's wonderful, Brooke. I'm so glad that you came up with this idea, and I think our panelists are as well. There's a lot of people who couldn't be here tonight and asked for recordings. So the need is definitely out there. And I like what you said about it being so individualistic. I gave an umbrella term, and that feels kind of weird to do. But so let's go ahead. So we're going to have our panelists. First of all, they're just going to tell us a little bit about themselves and their background, how they got to be where they are, and the science that they're working on now, or the jobs that they're working in now. And then after that, we'll start with our questions. I have some already submitted, and then we'll open it up to the audience too. So I'm going to start with Brooke. I guess you can just keep going. How about that? You can keep going, and then we'll go to Jamie next.
Yeah, that's great. My name is Brooke. I grew up in Chicago, and from a young age, I always love science. I always knew that was my thing. Growing up, I always knew I was going to grow up and be a biologist. I spent my whole entire childhood as a kid in my backyard looking for bugs. And I actually started off my academic journey at the University of San Francisco. And I went there originally wanting to go into biotech and stuff like that, but I had this very, very idea of keep on finding new things about biology that I really, really liked. And going to University of San Francisco is the first time I actually saw the ocean, and discovering the ocean was kind of the end game. It was like my overall fascination. And immediately once I discovered ocean and marine ecology, I knew that was going to be my passion for life. That was going to be exactly what I was going to do. And I literally did a 180 on my life. Took like brick to metal, pedal to the metal, how that expression goes. But decided that day I was going to be a marine biologist, and picked up and actually transferred to the University of Hawaii. And there I did undergraduate research in water quality, and then also did started diving and ended up doing some scientific dives in coral predation and did some research on that. And then actually just graduated in May, and I worked in a middle school teaching STEM for a little bit. And shortly after, I came to REEF, and I did the fall marine conservation internship program. And my time at REEF, I spent a lot focusing a lot on their education programs and citizen science. And I've really, really loved doing that. And also creating events, just kind of like this, but also doing it very uniquely as well. And right now my internship just ended in December. So right now I'm working on becoming a PADI dive professional.
That's awesome. Great. Thank you, Brooke. I appreciate that. Okay, Jamie.
Hi, so my name is Jamie, and to kind of like start this off, I've been in this field for quite some time. I'm 30. I ultimately ended up in geology because of my dyslexia diagnosis that happened when I was 21, right turning at 22, and my ADHD diagnosis came shortly thereafter. I always wanted to go into science, and originally I thought it was going to be medicine, but once I was in college, like my grades were just averaging out, like, and I had no idea why. I grew up in South Alabama, very deep South. So in the 90s, early 2000s and such, people don't have the resources to even detect dyslexia. Now they're getting better at it. But nonetheless, when I got that diagnosis and it made sense for how my brain worked, I was like, all right, medicine just isn't it. It's not built for me academically, as far as like I do better in smaller settings. I took my first geology class, never had one prior, like not in high school, not in middle school. I didn't even think about doing neuroscience. But when Dr. Merlene Clark, she's a pretty well-known paleontologist, she came in with this enthusiasm about volcanoes on that very first day. And it just like struck that fire in me that I was like, this is it. Changed my major that day, and the rest is history. I had just recently graduated back in 2020 after doing a couple of different things. The NASA JPL Solar System Ambassador is a program that I've been a part of for almost, I think I just signed for my 8th and 9th year. So I've been representing the Gulf Coast and anywhere that I really moved to bring public information to those about the space industry, what NASA is currently doing, JPL, and so much more. And what I currently do as a geologist is I'm in the remediation type of cleanup realm, and I've been in environmental science for like the last 5 or so years. So when you think about like the news with East Palestine of Ohio, my company is a part of like that cleanup. So I do that type of work, and it's very fascinating stuff. It's pretty grungy, but I very much enjoy it. And I also have recently gone into content creating. So it's been quite a journey. But nonetheless, I don't think this journey would have ever started had I not actually figured out how my brain operated, and that I was just a little bit different.
Oh, thanks, Jamie. That was fascinating. Yes, very valuable information to know, right, about yourself. Okay, David, you're up next.
All right. Aloha kako. My name is David Gravino. I'm a master's student at the Tropical Conservation Biology and Environmental Science program at the University of Hawaii at Hilo. I'm presently studying agroforestry, syntropic farming, and indigenous microorganisms as the foundation of sustainable agriculture and food sovereignty here in Hawaii. kind of seeking with some friends of mine to revolutionize modern agriculture by returning both literally and figuratively to the roots of agriculture and the billions of microorganisms that feed and connect them. Before I landed here, growing up, I was always very into the natural world. It was very much a sensory retreat for me. So we used to go to the Cleveland Zoo, where I was from, and they have this rainforest exhibit, and you click the button and there was like a full scale model of part of the Amazon, and the little lights would flicker out to show the rate of deforestation as these chainsaw sounds revved. So little 6-year-old me was like, oh, I need to save the rainforest. My work's taken me all over. I've been studying rainforests in Australia. I've had the good fortune to work in Panama as well with the Smithsonian Tropical Research Institute, raising vampire bats, and now I'm here in Hawaii. So it's been a wonderful journey across a number of fields, and I feel like I finally landed in a place where I can contribute meaningfully back to the world.
Well, that's fantastic, David. Thank you. That's quite a lot of journeys. And you're just beginning, right? And there's more to come, right, David? Okay, thank you. Tony, you're up.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm Tony. I'm currently a PhD student at St Andrews. I'm Scottish, if you can't tell as well. Everyone went so much further back than I expected them to, so now I'm trying to think how I got into science in the first place. Let's be honest, there's a ton of autistic people in science, so it was always just going to be the way I went. It's just a field my brain always worked with. I always gravitated towards it. I did my undergrad at St Andrews too. Hadn't really gone too far away, but I was originally going to do biology and French. I took one French class and dropped it and picked an earth science module instead. And by my second year of my undergrad, I was doing a joint biology geology undergrad. That was all fun and games until I realized I needed to pick a dissertation topic, and it was very difficult having 2 different supervisors from 2 different departments. That's when I met my current supervisor, and she introduced me to the field of astrobiology, which is what I focus on now. And I use kind of the interactions between biology and its geological environment to understand how life lives in extreme environments. And right now I'm studying Mars analogues. I'm studying hot springs in Iceland and the microbial communities that live in them, to understand both kind of what energy sources they use, what metabolic pathways are there, and what biosignatures they might produce in the rock record that we might be able to detect in ancient hot springs on Mars. I was diagnosed as autistic during my undergrad, about 3 months before COVID hit, so that was a wild ride. But I think, as with a lot of people during the pandemic, I kind of used that time to slowly figure out all the stuff I'd been hiding and all the stuff I'd been suppressing, and I took it as a really good opportunity to just learn more about myself and start to connect with other people online as well. So yeah, that's why I'm here as well.
Fascinating. That's just amazing. We're so lucky to have you all here tonight. So I think, I have a couple questions, more if we have time. We'll see how our time goes. So we can just kind of, I would say, just feel free to answer them. If there's something you want to pass on, that's fine too. And just feel free to answer on each question. And again, if you don't want to, you don't have to. But our first question would be, what has been the biggest challenge you faced in the science field as a neurodivergent person? Kind of a large, grandiose question, isn't it?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of challenges I think a lot of people face, but specifically ones that I've really had to go through was a lot during my undergraduate degree. If I transferred schools a lot, especially I did my degree during COVID and trying to navigate schools, switching from online, offline, and then I transferring from a community college to a non-community college, and then also then doing a transfer change and class changes and stuff like that. Not only navigating different schools was different, but also navigating disability services. And it was a big change. They don't prep you for, by the way, from getting disability services in high school, where the disability services do it, like, does kind of everything for you, where you really, if you need any kind of accommodations or disability services in university, it's a very, very much you're prying for those accommodations. And I noticed a lot what I struggled with. My accommodations, even though my needs stayed the same, my school allowed different accommodations, and I was only allowed certain accommodations for certain schools. And that was hard, dealing with the loss of not being accommodated with certain things, and trying to halfway through my college career, okay, I was used to doing things this way, and now I'm not going to have that accommodation anymore, and now it's like a little bit trickier for me, and I don't know what to do. And like that was a big challenge. And now going into the career field, which I feel like even in college, they do a little bit of kind of career prep, interview prep, but especially for like a neurodiverse person, I wasn't expecting it to be as challenging as it actually is. Like I knew, I went through like resume training and like how to prepare like a cover letter and stuff like that, but like the actual interview I never had practice with. And that was something that I've been like struggling with. And I've actually had interviewers come back to me saying that they think I'm unprofessional because I won't give them eye contact. And it's just like, I really don't, that's just stuff like they don't teach you how to navigate that. And then there's also other things where what would come up into an interview of like, do you tell them your disability? Like, do you think they will fault you for that? Like, do you have to tell them? Like, the biggest thing is that I don't drive because of my disability. Like that's that, and that does affect my work. I've had work turn me down because they're like, we need someone with a license. And it's just like, do I ask for like accommodations for that? Do I like, that's also was something that's been very, very challenging of trying to navigate that.
I can definitely touch base on that, Brooke, as far as like the navigation into the career field. Like I recently had to make that decision to tell my bosses about my ADHD because I was switching medications and it was throwing off my writing style with writing these phase 1 environmental site assessments. And basically what I've done in most of my interview techniques is I don't tell them anything about my neurodivergentness or anything like it. It's just, I kind of assume because they're older generation that they're going to have the stigmatized like thinking. So I just keep it on the low, like get the money, get the back. And then if need be, I will then express it, which is what it ultimately came up to. And it was so interesting because that's when I realized that they were pretty uneducated on like what ADHD like actually was. He actually compared it to the TV show The Good Doctor, which is about an autistic doctor. And it was a very awkward interaction when I was like, oh yeah, it's not that I'm just distracted. I was like, I'm just going to leave it at that. They don't prepare you for that in university or anything like it. But like the more experience you have, it just becomes more easier to like kind of mask during the times when needed and like pick up on those cues. And even in college, I had a very similar experience with how students, when they found out I had accommodations, felt like I had a one up against them. And that's completely not the case. Like getting double time was so that I could be equivalent to them, but they never saw it like that. Or when the imposter syndrome would hit, because I had one professor be like, dyslexia, you're going to be really good at structural geology because you can think in 3 dimensions and stuff. And I was like, yeah, I ended up making like a D in that class. It's okay. It was just one of those, like, it was so much pressure already from the beginning, just because I was expressing like, hey, this is why I have accommodations. And he's like, oh, you're going to be so great at this. I was like, please don't tell me that. This is not what I need. But it's just like, it depends on the generation that you're talking to nowadays, I feel. I've been able to be more expressive, and I've noticed with younger people coming into like my company, they, like one girl today who might get hired, she just flat out was like, yeah, I have ADHD. And like, she just like blatantly really said it really openly. And I was like, yeah, me too. And so like, I let that out in front of another coworker who like has no idea about my ADHD. But it's just kind of like, I feel like the younger generation is really helping break that barrier to make it a very just, conversational thing where it's just not as a norm. I mean, it's nothing too crazy, but like when you're dealing with boomer generation, or depending on where you're at region wise too, like being in the South, people have very limited out of the box thinking skills towards certain things. And so hopefully as younger millennials and Gen Z start to go into the workforce, we can really kind of like navigate those challenges and really kind of break those barriers. So it's just more comfortable for people to like be themselves.
I really appreciated your insight on, how we go about applying to positions, and, the decision of whether or not to disclose neurodivergency and when, because it's tricky. You never know like when people are going to judge you for that or limit your opportunities because of it. So I was diagnosed as autistic right around the start of the pandemic. And so the first job I took, was during the peak of COVID. I was hired to be a microbiology technician and eventually a lab inventory manager for the clinical testing facility at the Battelle Memorial Institute in Columbus, Ohio. And I decided not to disclose my neurodivergency ahead of time. Just, didn't seem like the wise choice. But shortly thereafter, they did these mandatory, like deep FBI background check screenings, because we were working potentially in labs that had access to a number of like extremely hazardous materials. Like, I probably shouldn't talk too much about that, but point being, deep background checks. And so they quickly flagged me as someone who's no longer eligible for that level of BSL-3 biosecurity work. They were like, nope, can't do it. Which, is fine with me because that's super intense work, and some of the sensory issues I have make it difficult to be like stuck in a place. And when you're in like a bio-sealed room and you can't leave without following a litany of lengthy procedures, it's not a comfortable space to occupy. But nevertheless, it wasn't easy to explain to neurotypical bureaucrats that like the sound of the fume hoods in the microbiology lab were exhausting and deeply stressful at times, right? So I had to figure out ways in which I could convey like the needs of my particular neurotype without without catching the ire of these institutional folks. And so I think to solve the problem I was having with the noise, I did a little research and found like a over-the-ear noise canceling headphones that could mute background noise while picking up vocals. And so I brought them this concrete solution. I was like, so look, this is like my now FBI disclosed neurotype. This is my problem, and this is the solution I found. So will you, meet that solution? And they were very receptive to that because I came with a very clear proposal as to what I want. So I think that when navigating businesses and systems, coworkers tend to respond better to pathos, just being honest with the people you're working with and being very human with them. But when it comes to like systems and bureaucracy, they tend to prefer logos, so if you can lean into the logic of like ADA and the things that we're protected for, it's easier to convince people for accommodations.
Yeah, I agree with you all. I think the lack of knowledge is one of the biggest struggles. I looked into accommodations during my undergrad before I was even formally diagnosed. I knew I was going to be I was on a waiting list, but I didn't want to wait for a piece of paper to get accommodations. I went to my university disability team, who were luckily very lovely. But the only accommodation they could offer me was extra time in exams, which does help some people, but wasn't something I needed. And other than that, I didn't really have an example of like an accommodation that I might need. It was almost like I didn't know what I could ask for. So I ended up saying like I didn't need any, and they just kind of logged that it was there in case I did need to. And then when I came back for my PhD, it was like, oh, well, I don't have exams anymore. So what are my accommodations now? So the thing I ended up doing was basically creating a disability support plan instead, which isn't necessarily asking for anything in particular other than basically understanding. And it's just a written document saying why I might need to do certain things or might need to have certain things in certain situations, why I have that. And basically I sent it to all of my supervisors so they're just aware of it. Things like noise cancelling headphones, fieldwork is a big thing for me. So that whole planning around fieldwork, I had to include rest days, I had to have alone time in the evenings, stuff like that. But I think I had no idea what accommodations looked like really. So I kind of just had to make up my own. But I think it would have been nice to have had an example, even if it wasn't something I necessarily needed, just an example other than, you know, extra exam time, just kind of the default. So yeah, and also the transition before and after getting a diagnosis and deciding when you tell people comes with, especially with like unmasking and things like that, people suddenly being very confused as to why you seem more autistic. And it's a difficult conversation to have because most of autism isn't seen. So people being exposed to it for the first time is often a little bit scary when you don't know how they're going to respond. So I think more knowledge of it would make it seem safer to talk about and to know what accommodations you want.
Yeah, beautifully said to all of you. I do, and you may or may not have been peeking in the chat as you're talking, but I wanted to share some things because, I mean, this is the point of having you all speak, but then our audience as well too. Ashley, I hope it's okay I said this, but they said my transition students have had the same challenge getting college level accommodations. It shouldn't be this difficult. You are alone. And I think you all kind of mentioned the challenges of getting the accommodations. And there's so much self-advocacy that is needed, which can be hard in itself. REEF staff says, thank you for sharing your experiences with this. It's so helpful to understand some of the implications of neurodiversity in the workplace in ways that I hadn't anticipated. So right here, you all are helping inform other people and broadening our horizons. Sue says, in high school, you have advocates, including parents, who work on your behalf. And then in college, you're expected to self-advocate, right? It just kind of ends. And there's no preparation for this. I'll save this, well, maybe we'll come back to this. I wonder if you have thought about putting a guide together to help other neurodivergent people navigate this situation. Well, as Tony mentioned, they just did put this together just for themselves, but that's a brilliant thing to do, to create that for yourself. So maybe we can talk more about that later, and I will jot that down. And so just some support for you're not alone, and we kind of scaffolding self-advocacy so you're not just thrown into things. So kind of David just touched on this a little bit, but and I guess you know, Jamie too, what would one thing be that you wish your peers or maybe in this case, your coworkers knew about neurodiversity?
I would say because it's something I personally had to experience very recently, and I actually had no idea about this until it applied to me. And turns out that those of us who are part of the neurodiversity community, if we experience a traumatic event, we are so much more significantly likely to develop PTSD and other type of just mental disorders following the event. And that was something that I had no idea like could impact like the severity. And so it's been quite interesting because not only was I coming out to my job about ADHD and everything was like a few months later, I was like, hey, by the way, and I ended up going on medical leave and having to like really self-advocate for myself. And I was really lucky that I had a very small company where I was working for, even though we're like corporate. We had like 4 people. I was like the only female geologist. So it was a very nice, like tight-knit family. But if it was a bigger corporation, I feel like it would have been a totally different just scenario. And I think this is where like that self-advocacy like comes in, is knowing what your state or countries like laws and regulations go for ADA, for anything that you may experience where you need to take off of work and etc. And just I just wish people had more resources to understanding, because sometimes we can't even really explain the whys behind how something affected us. And then when you have a neurotypical who has also gone through the same experience, but they very much, you can feel, did not end up in like the after effects like you did, it is a just really hard thing to like grasp and to like go back into the corporate world and stuff. But it's one of those things that I've learned to just like feel the vibe of people, and you'll be able to know who you can like just flat out tell people what's up. I've had to do that with my new boss. My company was bought out by another company and like this whole process. So when I came back from medical leave, I was going into this new office, and it was a lot. It was a lot of change. And I was like, I'm not ready to tell new people about this. But I was like, no, if I don't tell them and my work fails because of this, like they need to know like there's something up. And it's because of not only am I neurodiverse, I have this as well. And it's a like double whammy. So it's one of those things that I wish more people understood, is the implications that trauma can have on those of us in the neurodiverse community.
Yeah, no, I really agree with that. I think, yeah, the fact that it's like telling people that it's very rarely just one kind of neurodivergence or one kind of condition or whatever language you decide to use. But yeah, the amount of comorbidities that come with them and that are associated with them, it's with mental health issues as well as other disabilities. I don't think people realize that. And I also had people kind of misunderstanding when they saw me do something as like autistic, and then other times saw me acting normal. They saw it as like something that appears and disappears. And I was trying to explain to them, but it's because it's neurodiversity, it's literally how your brain works. So there's never a moment that I'm not being autistic. Even if they don't think I look autistic in that moment, it's literally how your brain processes information. There's no period of time that you're not doing that. And kind of it's so hard to explain to neurotypical people how we experience the world. But for instance, with sensory issues, I read the other day that sometimes people with sensory issues, different sensory experiences can trigger parts of your brain that are equivalent to kind of pain. And that struck me as something that I feel like more people should know, because when we're flinching because there's a loud noise and people think that we're just being sensitive, we're genuinely suffering, and I don't think they realize how much we don't show, I think.
Yeah, I think something that I really wish that didn't happen as much is how much people have like this one idea of what autism is, and then you kind of get compared to that idea, and then people kind of get confused on what you're doing. It's like, oh well, my daughter's nephew's son who's 4 years old has autism and he doesn't do that, so like, and they get very confused. There's like these very, very standard stereotypes what kind of autism is and autistic traits. And I guess it's like, it's true in like some degree that like there's like autistic traits and we share similar experiences, but there's like a saying where you meet one autistic individual, it's only one person with autism you met. Like you know, you're meeting a person. Like you're not like, it's so hard to like explain, but like it's like really hard to get through the idea that autism isn't like this like linear spectrum too. Like it gets, I like the way that people describe it where it's like more like the wheel isn't like severe or mild autism on the little line, like, because I feel like that's also very, very misleading too. And especially when I think you look at people that are able to like, I guess like do different things or like other traits time to time, and like, or you see them at different times or excel in certain things, and then it's like, it's weird to, I guess, neurotypicals, because they're like, but wait, then how are you like autistic if you're doing these things? And that's very hard to like convey. But then there was like another kind of thing, that quote that I like heard someone talk, and it really resonated with me too, was that like, my autism isn't mild, you just experience me mildly. And I really, really love that as well, because I think people, you just see, they can't see inside your head, they just see the outside. And I really wish that sometimes people could really see inside my head, and then they would understand. But of course you can't do that.
Yeah, and I guess to build on all of those comments, I think a lot of the things that we're trying to get at come down to masking behavior, and asking neurotypicals to understand what masking looks like can be very challenging, because it looks like, quote unquote normal behavior, and that's the point, right? Like, masking is a response to trauma, and it's a response to a very critical and rigid parameters and expectations of society, right? So we change our behavior to be perceived more normally, and thereby be safer and less likely to be singled out for something. So I think if I could ask, like, for one thing my peers and coworkers to understand better, is like the huge variety of masking behaviors that are out there, why they exist, and how they are no indication of like how autistic we are or anything like that. It's just different ways we've learned to adapt to the world. And to that end, I found this book. Oh, it's blurred out. Damn. It's Unmasking Autism by Devin Price. It came out relatively recently, and it's absolutely phenomenal. So I think anyone who's curious about neurodivergency should give it a read.
I love that book.
Thank you. I love the conversation going so far, and the chat is great too. So I think what we're going to do is I'm just going to read this, and then I'll open it up for questions. So Kelsey says, I'm a doctoral student in occupational therapy, and even our curriculum in 2023 has a very narrow definition for autism, and absolutely does not talk about how adults present or navigate their environments as they age. Part of being an advocate within my profession is pushing back on that narrative. And just so one of Brooke's wishes in this is to compile some resources. So tomorrow we will send you out an email, and we will have some of the resources. I'll include the book that David just mentioned. I can include the book also from Sue that she recommended, and then also a resource for parents, teachers, family members, and neurodivergent people themselves, a couple resources. So that's something that, thank you, Brooke. She wanted to make sure that people left with resources. So we'll make sure that happens. So you have a question, and I would say, you know, neurodivergency being the focus, but it is quite exciting to have these professional divers and scientists with us. And so any question that's relevant to science or neurodivergency, you're welcome to put that in the chat, or you are welcome to unmute yourself and ask it as well. I'll give you a couple of minutes, and then if we don't have any, then I have a couple questions I can keep going on with.
Hi there. I'm Ashley from Albany, California. Thank you so much to all the panelists. It's really been so inspiring to hear you speak. And I'm a transition teacher for 18 to 22-year-olds with disabilities. And I just love working with neurodivergent students and showing them the opportunities that they can have out there in the world. I guess my question for many of you is a little bit about your later in life diagnosis, and how did you go about seeking that out? Because many times, you know, kids are getting diagnosed at a younger age, and I applaud you for kind of taking that extra step later in life, because it becomes so much harder. So if any of you wanted to speak upon that, I was curious.
So my late diagnosis actually was not something that I was seeking out, but because of the geological timescale being in Latin, I'm phonetically and reading dyslexic, but I'm great with numbers. However, when it came to spelling the geological timescale, my professor knew something was up. So she pulled me aside one day and was just like, I know you got them in like the right, like somewhat order, but like something's off here. And thankfully at the time, the person that I was seeing, they had connections with this local reading and learning doctor who was able to get me in very quickly. And just because of that connection, I was able to then really figure out that the speech therapy I had when I was in 3rd grade was a telltale sign. But because it was the 90s, where there wasn't a lot of information for detection of dyslexia, they just thought, you know, you have a speech impediment or a speech problem or a spelling problem, you need speech therapy. It all really started to like make sense, like why I did certain things. And the way that I basically went by throughout school, she described, was I developed an out of the box thinking style. And because of that, it let me develop a very like open thinking style and personality as well. It wasn't like narrated by societal, parental, or any of like the academics, because I had no idea about it. I was allowed to just kind of figure things out and figure out what works out for me and apply it and do things a little bit different, and just get by, look like an average student. But that was how my late diagnosis like came about, and it really just helped me better understand how to succeed in my adulthood. So it actually gave me so many amazing opportunities once I figured out my strengths and my weaknesses, what to like work on. I used to be really like shaky in speech and like had a little bit of a like lisp and some speech impediments. And then I have interviewed with like Discovery Channel and all this kind of stuff, to where the like hard work that you put in, once you figure out those strengths and weaknesses, really do pay off. And they do take time. It took years for me to like get to that point and overcoming a lot of like obstacles, but that's kind of how that journey went.
Oh, sorry. I noticed David also unmuted. Sorry. Okay. Thank you. Yeah, I was also like diagnosed. I was 21 when I was diagnosed. And I think a common thing with autism and many neurodivergencies is they don't really know what they look like in female people versus male people, and they can look very different. I had not really considered that I was autistic until I was at least 20. I had meltdowns. I didn't know what meltdowns. I didn't know what they were, but I had meltdowns. I stimmed. I didn't know that was a stim. Everyone said it was a nervous tic, and everyone just thought I did it and didn't question it. So it wasn't that people didn't see signs. It was just they just didn't think it was autism. I actually first started really questioning it when a friend of mine opened up to me about being autistic. I had no idea that they were autistic, because in being an educator as I was, I didn't know autism could look like my friend. So I did a lot of it. Then led to like a good 6 months of research and realizing how it was different for female people versus male. And then slowly going for a diagnosis. I was on a waiting list for a year, like I said, so it took a while, and the actual diagnostic process was a lot. It was a lot, but it was really helpful for me, and I really only did it for me. I didn't do it for accommodations at the time because I didn't think I needed any. I genuinely did it so that I could explain to myself why I struggled with stuff and stop beating myself up about it. But yeah, I think that the lack of knowledge about what young girls look like when they're autistic is probably the reason I was missed.
Uh, so my diagnosis came much later. I was also 21, I believe. And I kind of stumbled into it as well because I was doing some research on like ADHD diagnosis for one of my partner at the time, actually. And I was like, wait, hyperfixation, overstimulation, these things feel deeply familiar. So, I decided to look into getting tested. And I guess to address George's question here in the chat too, yeah, I did have some pushback, largely from my family. Actually, they seem to have been resistant to the idea that I was actually autistic. Perhaps because I am like, I did well in academia without many accommodations. I was burning myself out. I had like nothing left in the tank by the time I graduated, and I had to bum off to Australia for a few months to just study in the rainforest to recover from things. But I hit it well enough that it wasn't obvious. So yeah, I think absolutely there's this perception of if you're like too good at the things you're doing, like people expect you not to be able to function as well if you're neurodivergent for some reason. And that definitely can be a barrier. But the diagnosis process itself was honestly kind of comforting for me. It was like walking back through myself and suddenly recognizing all of these things that were coalescing into something that made sense. And I took comfort in that. And I wasn't seeking accommodations either. I was already done with my undergrad, so I just kind of wanted to understand better. And that's what I found ultimately. It was a better understanding of myself. And being able to let go of those perceived limitations that I had. I was always frustrated about like not feeling comfortable in social situations or not spending time with friends, and I was like, why don't I do these things? And then I was like, oh, well, that's why. So good question. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a wonderful question. Sorry, go ahead, Brooke.
No, you're good. Yeah, I was also discovered later in life as well. I was halfway through my undergraduate career. I believe I was about 20. But I kind of had, I kind of also, like everyone else, I kind of like stumbled upon it where I actually, when I discovered I was autistic, I actually reached autistic burnout. And if you guys don't know what autistic burnout is, it's when you reach such a level of chronic stress for such a long time without any support, that you pretty much just kind of shut down. You kind of lose function, and I just was not functioning. And then I was able to get the support I needed. And at that time, that's when they kind of started putting pieces together. It's like, oh, this is what you're experiencing. And at that point, when people started, like, they explained it to me, and it was kind of like a reverse, because at that time I was uneducated and I had no idea what autism was. And kind of like my whole life, like I've had like the clear cut kind of things that always got kind of pushed off, like the meltdowns. I had really bad anxiety, and it was always mislabeled as something else. And so that, to me, that was normal. Like, like it was just like, that was my life, like, so then it was just kind of like putting all the pieces together finally, and then being able to get kind of resources to know, like, okay, like, well, now I know what's gonna be able to like kind of suit me better. Like I could kind of know myself better, and being able to kind of play around with that a little bit more helped me out tremendously. Obviously not pushing my point to the point where I'm burning out. I mean, we all have bad days, but it was the experience. And then also kind of similar to like David, like it was hard going back to like friends and family, and then also having to explain to them, like, I'm away at school, and like having to come back and explain to them like everything I just been through. Like I was really had to go through this whole like burnout situation. People had to explain to me what autism is, and I had to do all this self-discovery of how to pretty much discover myself and what works for me, and how to adequately support myself, and then come back and tell them everything that I've been dealing with my childhood is actually something completely different than we've been thinking. And it was kind of like a double take, like, what, are you sure? It's like, well, yeah, you just didn't see what I've been doing by myself for the past like, you haven't seen all like the work and all the struggles and stuff like that that I came to this realization. And I think that's also what's been like kind of where that pushback a lot from friends and family is, like, they don't realize how much actual self-work it does and reflection it does take for that.
Well, yeah, you all are being so candid about your experiences, and that's really, you're so forthcoming and kind to share, and it's really appreciated. There's a lot of thank yous in the chat, and for you to share, like Jamie said, traumas and autistic burnout. It's we don't take it lightly that you're sharing with us, so we thank you very much. One question is, there's so many good questions coming in. I'm just going to go down the line. How can I help as a neurotypical person?
Oh wait, I'll let you go, Brooke.
Honestly, it's, I think, just like offering support and offering space to be there and for us to be heard is the biggest thing. And I remember in the REEF office, I think I was having like a bad sensory day, and I just like to like literally just like have, I call it like floor time, just like grounding time, and then just like literally just be on the floor like in a ball. And naturally everyone's like, what, like they wanted like just come over and this like tell me like to stop, or like, and it's like but then like my other interns, it's like, oh no, she's just being Brooke, like she's just doing her Brooke thing, like she's doing what she needs to do. And it's just like, giving that space, like, like if I like just like having more that like allowing space, allowing us to like stim and have accommodations, and just like, yeah, just allowing us to be ourselves pretty much.
And I'm going to piggyback off of that, exactly kind of what I was going to start off with, is like the environment for us to be ourselves. Like I, as someone who has a little bit of like the hyperactivity, when I get onto a topic about space, I become super excited, and usually like I'm talking like 150 miles an hour and et cetera. And it's just this pure excitement that only comes like because that's like my hyperfixation. And when people tell me, like, because I apologize usually when that happens, I'm like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. They're like, oh no, like keep going, like I enjoy it. That's so supportive to that person. And I think it really kind of like, there's so many different scenarios when we're talking about the neurodivergent and neurotypical like dynamic. Personally, from something that I experience as an ADHD person, because we like to like empathize through storytelling, like story sharing. I forget, there's a particular name for it. With a neurotypical person, they see it as like us trying to change the storyline, but we're trying to connect because we've experienced something. So more or less, if you feel like you're not being heard by your neurodivergent friend, you need to be able to voice that sooner than later, because a lot of times they don't mean to. We just try to relate based on stories that we've experienced. And it's the only way we kind of like operate and know how to relate to what someone is sharing with us. And I had a friend who kind of waited way to the point where she was like, she just felt really unheard. And it just was the most awful thing to experience, because you, as a neurodivergent, you're not aware that you're doing it. It's just who you are. And so one that like what Brooke said, the environment to be themselves, but also for neurotypical, if you got to be able to voice if you feel like you're not being heard, because depending on how their brain operates, it will benefit the friendship in the long run and give you a better dynamic, because sometimes we aren't aware until someone tells us.
Very helpful. Thank you. Let's see. Oh, go ahead, David.
I've got one thing. I think I found that when interpreting people's behavior, it helps to interpret it generously, like even if you don't know if the person is neurodivergent or not, like it doesn't cost us anything to interpret people's behaviors within a wide scope and be like, what are the things that might be informing this behavior, and why should I not take it personally, So I try to offer that sort of grace to strangers in my life, and it's always appreciated when it's offered to you as well. So that's all I had to say on
that. I'll quickly finish, I suppose, by saying that I think the thing I want most from neurotypical people is not to expect me to act neurotypical. I've seen and I've experienced people unknowingly pushing neurotypical behaviors onto neurodivergent people, especially children. Kind of waiting for them to make eye contact, trying to force them for hugs, pushing them into new social situations to try and make them make friends when they're very clearly uncomfortable. And that keeps going into adulthood as well, with friendships, with relationships, expecting us to have relationships in the same way a neurotypical person would. That's not going to happen. You need to kind of go into it with not no expectations, but just ready to have it be different than maybe what you expect, and just embrace that, because if you do, you'll get a lot in return. So yeah.
Thank you, everyone, for sharing. Okay, let's see here. We've got Jennifer was wondering, why do you think science fields may be more accessible to neurodivergent people?
I like this question. I think it's kind of unsurprising that a lot of autistic folks are drawn to the sciences, whether it's for the comfortingly systematic approach to understanding things, or the solace of field work, or the cool quiet interiors of our labs. There's so many different environments to be found in science, and there's so many different ways of understanding that we can really wrap our minds around well and take well to. So like for me, I love the solace of being out in the field. I love doing farm work. And I love being able to approach things in a systematic way and, you know, understand the world kind of from the ground up. It's very meaningful to me.
Yeah, I feel that it's very much like exactly what I was going to vibe off of, because for me, like geology is so many different type of opportunities depending on what you specialize in, but in general, like the being outside, the change of environment, but that's like fitted for you. But in essence, in general, like all of the sciences, I feel like allow for this side of creativity that you can kind of really let your brain do its thing to find a solution and to like just do your like analytical quirk to get to what you need to, or to come up with a solution in some way. And so it just allows, I feel like, this like true feeling of being oneself. I feel like when you're trying to figure out a problem and you can let your brain just like free flow into the ways that it operates. And it's the sciences are just much more accepting of the neurodivergence because of those gifts that we possess.
Yeah, I think just I agree with everything, and just to piggyback just off that too, I think a lot of people that do join the science field join also for just their sole passion for it. And I also think that's why you will find a bunch of more people in the neurodiverse community in there, just because it's for their own passion. They want to do it for their passion. It's their interest. Yeah.
Yeah, I think for me, when I was younger, I was drawn to sciences and maths because there was always kind of a right answer. It wasn't as kind of vague as things like English, which infuriated me because there could be multiple right answers to a question, and my brain just didn't work like that. As I've gotten into science, though, I think it has allowed me to start thinking more creatively. Just a word wasn't coming. But in a way that works for my brain, and I think science encourages those of us with different brains to thrive, because a lot of the amazing inventions and theories and things in science wouldn't have been created by someone with a neurotypical brain.
That reminds me of a thing that, oh my goodness. So as a kid, I couldn't really engage in like imaginative play. I couldn't picture worlds that like these other people were interacting with. So like my sister and her friends would be, you know, princesses and knights, and I'd be in the basement like, oh, I'm gonna be the postman, I guess. I'll go get the snacks from upstairs. Because like I couldn't see this world that they were interacting with, but I could go get something tangible and still kind of participate that way. But now, like at this current point in my life, I've found Dungeons and Dragons actually to be a means of, it provides this set of rules, this framework, you know, that makes sense. It provides this logical structure on which I can build a creative world, but within parameters that make sense to me. So it kind of enables creativity in a way that I didn't really have access to as a child, because everyone else seemed to have this rule book that I just couldn't understand or see. So it's really cool to be at this point in my life where I have this opportunity to be incredibly creative through a system that, you know, works and makes sense to me. So just wanted to share that.
I think I can see Tony agreeing with you, possibly. I don't know, but no, I'm glad you shared that. That's a really, it's a neat experience to hear about. So this question, I think, David, you kind of answered this a little bit. George's, did you experience any pushback when you were trying to get in a diagnosis, but in the way that you were being perceived as too clever because you were already in higher education? Like I hope I said that right, George. I hope I did due diligence to your question.
Yeah, I definitely experienced that. I obviously did a lot of research myself before going for a diagnosis, and didn't start telling close family members until I was on the waiting list. I have a parent who has worked with disabled and autistic people for 20 years and never knew I was autistic. And I think that was a very difficult thing to get around because they felt as though they should have recognized it, and so didn't really fully believe me or understand maybe why I was going for a diagnosis, because I wasn't necessarily someone who had very high support needs like some of the people my parent works with. But luckily, my parent has now become like the biggest because they know all of the ways to support people, and now they can see those traits and struggles sometimes in me. Now that they know what they look like, it's actually been really helpful. But yeah, it was just, even someone who works with autistic people didn't know like everything about it. So I guess, yeah, I think most people I don't think go for a diagnosis if they're not autistic. If you're thinking that you are, then a diagnosis is going to help you regardless.
Yeah, I definitely agree on that. As far as like, you are the only person who's going to understand how you feel and how you operate. And if seeking that diagnosis is what you're being driven to do it. It will literally change your life in ways of just helping you better adapt to your environment. And as far as like pushback, I didn't really experience any when it came to like getting the diagnosis. Mine was more on the realm of like finally understanding who I am, and then coming from a family that doesn't care to learn about it or anything of it. And it's like I was so excited to finally understand how I worked. And like, so I picked up on patterns that I was doing that was like attributed to like how my ADHD was or my dyslexia. And I would like make mentions of it. And I could see that like for them, it was just very nuanced. Like it was very interesting. It's definitely one of those things where I just kind of mask around them now and just let it be, because sometimes you just like got to do that with Southern folk parents and parents who just like, or anybody for that matter, who doesn't want to educate themselves. So that's really kind of the only pushback that I had, was feeling understood by the people I wanted my support system to be the most, which was family.
Yeah, I've definitely had people minimize my experience, and professionals minimize my experience because they look at the sheet of paper and they go, oh, you got your degree? Oh, you live independently? Oh, you travel and you work? Doesn't sound like you need help. You're fine. And automatically that's like, okay, cool, you're not someone that I want to seek out help from. I'm like, you're not gonna sit here and like listen to me. So far as that goes, it's like, okay, like that's great. Like I don't even need to waste my time. But it is just something that I actually got which was sad, got used to. I had a trying to seek help and accommodations. I would like go there and try to tell them like hey, like I'm looking for this, or I'm like looking for some type of like accommodations or therapies and help, some resources, and they'll be like, but why? And that was very, very hard, especially coming through like just coming off like a hard time. That was something that I like had to learn to get through and learn not to take to heart, which was hoping in the future as a society we could work on.
Thank you, Brooke. Well, we're going to have to wrap it up right now. Tony is, we're going to let her go to bed. for the rest of the few hours. But are going to, Martha is going to put a survey link in the chat right now. We just thank you all for joining. REEF is very passionate about protecting biodiversity and how it strengthens the natural ecosystem underwater, but it also strengthens us on land and how we all operate and are one as a world. And so I just want to thank you all so much for sharing your experiences. You've been amazing. You've taken time out of your busy work and life. And I hope that possibly you guys have made a connection with each other too, the panelists as well. And we can keep working on growing an audience that is understanding of neurodiversity and what it all entails and all of the wonderful things that it brings to our lives. I just want to remind you, Autism Acceptance Month is coming up in April, and you can look for an email with the recording and a survey link. And we just want to thank you all for attending as well and participating in the chat. So I hope you all have a great night and morning, and thank you all so, so much. Goodbye. Well, thank you, everyone. I don't think anyone else is here, but David, if you're here, thanks for your help.